She walked slowly, each step deliberate, her cane clicking softly against the polished airport floor. To most, she looked like just another elderly traveler, gray hair tucked under a simple hat, loose cardigan draped over thin shoulders, glasses perched low on her nose, a small leather carry-on bag dangled from her hand, worn at the edges like it had seen decades of journeys. Few noticed the calm power in her stride, the quiet confidence behind her eyes. And that was exactly how Evelyn Grace wanted it. For years, she had been the kind of woman who drew cameras, who commanded boardrooms, whose name alone sent waves across the financial world. As the CEO of Grace Industries, she had built an empire in logistics, tech, and aviation. Her company operated shipping lines across 3 continents, and just last year, Forbes had called her the matriarch of global commerce. But today, none of that mattered. She wasn't Evelyn Grace, billionaire CEO, she wasn't the woman who had negotiated with presidents, who had shattered ceilings not built for people who looked like her. Today she was just an old woman in disguise. Because sometimes, power needed to go unseen. Her assistant had begged her not to do it. "Madam Grace, please, we can arrange private security, an escort, a full entourage if you wish." But Evelyn had only smiled. "No, child. I want to see how they treat me when they don't know who I am. I want to see what my wealth can't protect me from. That's the only way to know the truth." And so here she was, alone, dressed in clothes she hadn't worn in years, makeup carefully dulling her sharp features, posture adjusted just enough to sell the illusion of fragility. No one at this bustling airport had any idea they were walking past one of the most powerful women in the country. She approached the private boarding gate reserved for corporate partners. It was her plane, her company's aircraft, purchased outright, operated by her staff. A gleaming black and silver jet waited just beyond the glass, its logo shining in the afternoon sun. She paused for a moment, gazing at it with pride. This wasn't just a plane, it was a symbol of everything she had fought for, every insult she had endured, every barrier she had torn down. But the moment she reached the gate, the illusion shattered. "Excuse me, ma'am." A sharp male voice cut through the air. Evelyn turned her head and saw a young security officer stepping in front of her. His uniform was crisp, his posture straight, but his eyes, cold, dismissive, told the real story. "This area is restricted. Passengers only." "I am a passenger," Evelyn said softly, her voice steady. She held out her boarding pass. The officer barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "This doesn't look right. Where did you get this?" "From my assistant," she replied. He scoffed. "Right. And I'm supposed to believe an old lady like you is boarding this jet?" He jerked his thumb toward the plane outside. "Do you even know how much this aircraft is worth? Do you even understand who flies on it?" Evelyn's lips curved into the faintest smile. "More than you'll ever know," she thought. But she didn't speak the words aloud. Instead she tilted her head. "So you're saying I don't belong here?" The officer crossed his arms. "Exactly. This isn't for tourists. This is for executives, CEOs, people who actually matter." His eyes flicked to her cane. "Not for someone like you." The sting of his words landed, not because she believed them, but because she had heard them all before. In boardrooms, in investor meetings, in hushed voices that thought she wasn't listening. "Not for someone like you." It was the chorus of her life. She had built her empire precisely because of that phrase. Every time someone told her she didn't belong, she carved her place deeper into the world. And now, after all these years, she was hearing it again from a young man who didn't even know her name. "I think you should step aside," the officer continued, his voice growing louder, drawing glances from nearby travelers. "Before I have to call someone." A second guard appeared. This one taller, broader, his expression even harder. He looked at her like she was a nuisance, an obstacle to be cleared. "What's the problem here?" "This woman is trying to sneak onto the executive jet." The first officer sneered. The taller guard narrowed his eyes at Evelyn. "Mom, this gate isn't for you. I suggest you return to the main terminal." Evelyn tightened her grip on her cane. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with the controlled fury of a woman who had been underestimated too many times. She inhaled deeply, then exhaled, steadying herself. "You're making a mistake," she said. The taller guard smirked. "The only mistake is you thinking you can bluff your way into a world you don't belong in." The words echoed in the air, sharp and humiliating. A few bystanders stopped to watch, whispering, some shaking their heads as though the scene confirmed every bias they carried. An elderly black woman, daring to step where the world told her she shouldn't. Evelyn swallowed the fire rising in her chest. Not yet, she told herself. Not yet. There was a time to reveal the truth, and it was not this moment. Instead she simply stepped back, letting the guards block her path, their arrogance on full display. Little did they know, every second of their behavior was being watched. Because in the corner of the lounge, a quiet man in a tailored suit was filming the entire interaction on his phone. He knew who Evelyn was, he knew the truth of her disguise, and soon so would everyone else. But for now, Evelyn simply lowered her gaze, letting the performance continue. Sometimes, letting them underestimate you was the sharpest weapon of all. The whispers grew louder as Evelyn stood at the gate, the two guards still blocking her path. Travelers passing by slowed down, curious to see what the commotion was about. Some smirked, others frowned, and a few took out their phones to record. In a world where everything became content, humiliation traveled faster than truth. The taller guard leaned closer, his tone laced with condescension. "Ma'am, I don't know how you got this boarding pass, but I suggest you save yourself the embarrassment and leave now." Evelyn met his gaze steadily. "This is my plane." Laughter erupted from the younger guard. "Your plane? That's a good one. What are you, some billionaire hiding in plain sight?" His tone dripped with sarcasm. "Lady, I've seen people try scams before, but you take the cake." The words stung not because they were insulting, but because they revealed how deeply the world underestimated her. She thought of her early years, the boardrooms where her presence had been questioned, the investors who refused to shake her hand, the journalists who asked who really ran her company, as though a black woman could not possibly lead an empire. Her father's words echoed in her memory. "The world will doubt you before it sees you. Let them. When you reveal your strength, their doubt becomes their shame." Evelyn adjusted her glasses and quietly stepped aside, allowing them to feel victorious. She didn't need to argue, not yet. From across the lounge the man in the tailored suit, Marcus, her head of security, watched closely. Though Evelyn had insisted on traveling alone, Marcus had disobeyed her orders in one small way. He had kept his distance, out of sight, but always near. He knew Evelyn well enough to anticipate trouble, and as he recorded the confrontation, his jaw tightened. He typed a quick message on his phone. "They're blocking her. Keep cameras rolling. This is about to go viral." Back at Grace Industries headquarters, a team of executives received the message with alarm. Screens lit up, calls were made, and within minutes, the video feed was being shared across private networks. The CEO herself was being humiliated at her own gate, and soon, the world would know. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat quietly on a bench nearby, her cane resting across her lap. The guards had resumed their post, still casting suspicious glances in her direction. She felt their eyes on her, judging, dismissing, certain she was nothing more than an old woman out of place. But power, she knew, often wore disguises, and arrogance rarely recognized it until it was too late. As the boarding announcement rang out, a group of sharply dressed executives approached the gate, laughing and chatting. They carried designer luggage, wore tailored suits, and exuded entitlement. The guards straightened their posture, their demeanor shifting instantly to respect. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," the taller guard said with a smile. "Right this way." The executives barely acknowledged him, flashing their passes before walking toward the jet. Evelyn rose from her seat and followed, her steps calm, her eyes steady. "Ma'am." The younger guard barked, stepping in front of her again. "I told you already, this isn't your flight." She tilted her head. "And if it is?" He laughed harshly. "Then I'll eat my badge. Now step back before I call airport police." The executives paused at the jet bridge, turning to glance at the scene. One of them, a tall man with slicked back hair, smirked. "She probably wandered in here by mistake. Don't waste time on her." Their laughter echoed, low and mocking. Evelyn's heart remained steady, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. She had faced this kind of ridicule all her life, but today, they were writing a story they would soon regret. Because Evelyn Grace did not build an empire by accepting disrespect. At that moment, Marcus stepped forward from the corner of the lounge, no longer hidden. He walked with deliberate confidence, his phone still recording. "Excuse me," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Are you refusing boarding to the owner of this aircraft?" The guards blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Marcus pointed directly at Evelyn. "This woman is Evelyn Grace, CEO of Grace Industries, billionaire, owner of this very jet." The room froze, conversations halted, eyes widened, and even the executives at the gate stopped mid-step. The guards exchanged glances, their bravado faltering. The younger one stammered, that's impossible. She doesn't look." He caught himself too late, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Evelyn finally stood tall, pulling her glasses off and straightening her shoulders. In an instant, the disguise seemed to vanish, and the regal authority of the CEO radiated from her. Her voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the silence. "You're right about one thing," she said, her tone sharp as steel. "I don't look like the people you expect to see in power. But let me be very clear, I built this airline, I bought that jet, and every paycheck you receive, directly or indirectly, exists because of me." Gas rippled through the lounge. Cameras clicked. Phones recorded. The taller guard swallowed hard, his confidence collapsing. Madam Grace, I didn't realize." "You didn't care to realize." Evelyn interrupted, her eyes locking on his. You saw an old black woman and decided she couldn't possibly belong here. You judged before you asked. You dismissed before you understood. That arrogance may have blinded you today, but let me assure you, it will cost you tomorrow. The executives shifted uneasily, realizing they had joined the wrong side of the scene. One of them cleared his throat and muttered, We didn't know Madame Grace. She turned her gaze toward them, her eyes narrowing. And yet, you laughed. Silence fell heavy. Marcus stepped forward again, raising his phone higher. The world is watching, he said coldly. And this footage will tell its own story. The guards paled, the executives fidgeted, and the crowd of bystanders whispered in awe. What had begun as a scene of humiliation had flipped entirely. Evelyn lifted her chin, her voice calm but resolute. Respect should not be given because of my title. It should not be given because of my wealth. It should be given because I am human. And you failed that test today. The guards dropped their eyes ashamed. Evelyn walked past them without another word, her cane striking the floor with deliberate rhythm. Each step was a declaration, a reminder of the power she carried not just in her name, but in her dignity. As she approached the jet bridge, the crowd parted, silence following her like a shadow. And when she stepped onto her plane, the tension broke, replaced by the buzz of stunned disbelief. Everyone had just witnessed the fall of arrogance and the rise of truth. But this was only the beginning. Inside the jet, the cabin was silent, save for the hum of the engines preparing for departure. The flight attendants, who had been waiting nervously, straightened as Evelyn entered. They knew exactly who she was. Even if her disguise had fooled the guards outside. Welcome aboard, Madame Grace, one of them said softly, bowing her head. Evelyn offered a faint smile and waved her hand. No need for formality. Today, I am simply a passenger. She lowered herself into one of the plush leather seats, setting her cane against the armrest. Her heart was steady, but her mind replayed the scene at the gate. For a woman who had spent a lifetime building respect, it was a reminder that prejudice had no expiration date. You could be powerful, wealthy, accomplished, and still dismissed in an instant. Marcus entered the cabin moments later, his phone still buzzing with notifications. He sat across from her, his brow furrowed. The video is already spreading, Madame Grace. My feed is exploding. By the time we land, it'll be everywhere. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Then let it. The truth has a way of traveling faster than lies. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Do you realize what this means? Those guards, those executives, this is going to spark outrage. People will demand answers. She opened her eyes, her gaze calm but resolute. Good. The world needs to see what arrogance looks like when it's stripped bare, and perhaps it will remind a few that dignity cannot be measured by wealth or appearance. The jet door closed, and the aircraft began to taxi. Through the window, Evelyn could still see the stunned faces in the lounge, phones raised, whispers echoing. She wondered what stories they would tell when they went home that night. Would they speak of an old woman humiliated at the gate, or of a CEO who revealed herself like a storm breaking the silence? As the jet lifted into the sky, Evelyn allowed herself a long breath. The city lights twinkled below, fading as clouds embraced the plane. She leaned back in her seat, memories flooding in. She thought of the first time she had been told she didn't belong. She had been a young woman, barely 20, interviewing for an internship at a shipping firm. The manager had glanced at her resume, then at her skin, then tossed it aside. We're looking for someone who fits the company image, he had said flatly. She hadn't argued. She had simply walked out, tears burning her eyes, and vowed never again to let anyone dictate her image. Years later she would own that same firm, renaming it Grace Logistics and transforming it into an empire. The guards at the airport were just the newest voices in a long chorus of doubt. But doubt, Evelyn had learned, was fuel, and today, the fire was burning hotter than ever. Marcus cleared his throat. Madame Grace, do you want me to issue a statement when we land? She shook her head. No, let the video speak. Let the people judge what they saw. Silence, in moments like this, is louder than words. He nodded slowly, admiration softening his stern features. He had guarded her for years, through boardroom threats and political games, but he never stopped marveling at her composure. As the plane leveled in the sky, Evelyn gazed out at the horizon. The sunset bled into shades of crimson and gold, the kind of beauty that silenced even the most troubled hearts. She thought of her mother's voice, long gone but never forgotten. One day, they will see you not as what they expect, but as who you are. Her reverie was interrupted when the pilot's voice came through the intercom. Madame Grace, we've received a message from ground control. There's been quite a stir since boarding. They're requesting confirmation of your presence on board. Evelyn chuckled softly. They want proof the old woman is real. Yes, ma'am. Tell them this, she replied, her tone sharp with quiet authority. Tell them the old woman is not only real, she's flying her own plane. The attendants exchanged subtle smiles, pride flickering in their eyes. But while Evelyn was soaring above the clouds, the storm she left behind on the ground was only growing. At the airport, the footage of the confrontation had already gone viral. By the time the guards realized who she was, thousands of shares and millions of views were stacking up online. Hashtags like Evelyn Grace and Fair Respect Beyond titles trended within hours. News outlets scrambled to cover the story. Headlines screamed, "Elderly Black CEO blocked from her own jet," and "Discrimination at 30,000 feet, Evelyn Grace humiliated at gate." Commentators debated the symbolism, activists demanded accountability, and corporations quietly panicked about what this meant for their own policies. The two guards found themselves swarmed by reporters, their faces splashed across screens worldwide. Their smug expressions from earlier became memes, their arrogance dissected in real time. By nightfall, they were suspended pending investigation. The executives who had laughed, their companies issued hurried apologies, distancing themselves from the incident. Contracts wavered, partnerships cracked, reputations unraveled. It was as if Evelyn's silent lesson had struck them harder than any speech could have. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat quietly in her cabin, sipping tea poured by the attendant. The world outside roared with noise, but inside, there was only calm. She had lived long enough to know that storms always came, and always passed. Marcus glanced at his buzzing phone again. "Your board is calling for an emergency meeting. They want to capitalize on this moment, show solidarity, make statements." Evelyn set her teacup down, her eyes sharp. "This is not a moment to capitalize on. This is a mirror for the world to look into. Let them see themselves. Let them decide if they like what they see." Her words carried the weight of decades of wisdom. As the plane soared through the night, Evelyn closed her eyes. In her stillness, she was not just a CEO, not just a billionaire, not just a symbol. She was a woman who had fought every inch of her way through a world that never expected her to rise, and she had risen anyway. And though the world trembled now at her revelation, Evelyn knew the truth: the trembling was not for her power. It was for their shame. By the time Evelyn's jet touched down in New York, the story had become unstoppable. News vans clustered outside her company's headquarters, cameras flashing as commentators dissected every second of the viral video. Social media overflowed with outrage, praise, and disbelief. Some called her a hero, others a pioneer, but nearly all agreed on one thing: the treatment she endured was unacceptable. Inside the boardroom of Grace Industries, her executives sat in tense silence as they watched the live coverage. The massive screen on the wall replayed the moment when Evelyn revealed her identity, her calm dignity cutting through the guards' arrogance like lightning. One board member muttered, "She turned humiliation into history." Another shook his head, awe in his voice. Only Evelyn could stand there silent, and still make the world tremble. When Evelyn finally entered the room later that night, cane tapping softly against the polished floor, the executives rose to their feet. She waved them down gently, lowering herself into her chair at the head of the table. "You've seen the footage," she said. Her voice carried no anger, no gloating. "Tell me. What have we learned?" The CFO cleared his throat. "That bias is still alive. That people still judge what they see before they ask who someone is." The marketing director leaned forward. "And that the world is watching us. This isn't just about you, Madam Grace. This is about every company that claims to value diversity but fails when the moment truly matters." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Exactly. This is not my story alone. This is a mirror. And now the question is, how do we respond?" Her eyes swept the table. She saw determination in some faces, hesitation in others. For years, she had led these people through crises, economic downturns, political storms, global pandemics. But this was different. This was personal. Finally she spoke. "We do not respond with rage. We do not respond with spectacle. We respond with truth, with action. If the world is watching, then let them see what real leadership looks like." Marcus, who stood near the doorway, allowed himself a small smile. He knew what was coming. Evelyn never wasted humiliation, she transformed it. The next morning, Evelyn appeared on national television. She wore a simple black dress, her gray hair neatly tied back, her cane resting beside her chair. The host greeted her nervously, aware that millions were watching. "Madam Grace," the host began, "first, thank you for being here. The world has seen the video. Can you tell us, in your own words, what happened at that airport?" Evelyn folded her hands in her lap. "What happened is not new," she said calmly. "What happened to me happens to people every day. The difference is I have a name, a title, and a fortune that made people listen. But countless others, elderly, black women, people dismissed because of how they look, face the same arrogance without cameras to capture it." Her words landed with the weight of undeniable truth. The host nodded, visibly moved. "So what message do you want people to take from this?" Evelyn's eyes pierced through the lens, speaking not just to the audience in the studio but to every viewer at home. Respect should never be conditional. It should not depend on wealth, on titles, or on recognition. Respect should be the baseline of humanity. If we cannot grant that to one another, then what kind of society are we building? The interview spread like wildfire. Clips of her words flooded timelines, news anchors repeated her quotes, and activists adopted her message as a rallying cry. She had taken a moment of personal indignity and turned it into a universal lesson. But even as the world praised her, Evelyn remained grounded. She knew applause faded. What mattered was change. Back at Grace Industries, she launched a new initiative, the Dignity Project. It was a program designed to train employees, security officers, executives, staff at every level, on bias awareness, empathy, and leadership. This is not about punishing the guards, she explained at the launch event. This is about preventing the next Evelyn Grace from being dismissed, whether she is a billionaire or a janitor. The initiative gained global traction. Companies across industries reached out, asking to adopt the program. Within months, the Dignity Project had become a movement, reshaping corporate training and forcing businesses to confront the subtle prejudices that often went unchallenged. Yet, not everyone celebrated. Critics emerged, accusing Evelyn of using the incident for publicity. She staged it. Some scoffed. She wanted attention. Others argued that focusing on one high-profile event distracted from systemic issues. Evelyn listened to every critique but did not flinch. Let them talk. She told Marcus one evening. I did not build my empire by silencing doubters. I built it by proving them wrong. That night, as she sat in her quiet study, she replayed the video one more time. She studied her own face in those moments. The calm smile, the sharp words, the steadiness that had come not from wealth but from a lifetime of resilience. Her late husband's voice seemed to whisper in her ear, "You were always meant to be more than a CEO, Evelyn. You were meant to be a symbol." She closed her eyes, her heart swelling with both pride and humility. She had never sought to be a symbol. She had only sought to survive, to succeed, to prove wrong those who said she couldn't. But sometimes, survival itself became a beacon for others. The next morning, Evelyn received a letter delivered by hand. It was from the very guard who had mocked her at the airport. His handwriting was shaky, his words filled with remorse. I judged you before I knew you. I saw your age, your skin, and assumed you were less. I was wrong. I am sorry. You taught me more in 5 minutes than any training ever could. Evelyn read the letter twice, then set it aside. Forgiveness was not hers to give freely. It had to be earned. But the fact that he had written it at all was proof that change, however small, was possible. Later that day, she stood before her employees, thousands gathered in the atrium of Grace Industries. She did not speak of wealth, power, or humiliation. She spoke of dignity, of resilience, of the kind of respect that should flow freely between people. Remember this, she said, her voice echoing through the vast space. Titles fade, wealth shifts, applause dies, but dignity, the way we treat one another, that is the legacy we leave behind. The crowd erupted in applause, but Evelyn only smiled faintly. She knew the work was not done, it never would be. But in that moment, she felt something stronger than triumph. She felt peace. Weeks later, Evelyn walked through the bustling concourse of another airport, this time without disguise. Her tailored navy suit caught the light, her stride was firm despite the cane, and travelers turned their heads in recognition. Some whispered, some smiled, and a few even applauded quietly as she passed. She didn't bask in it, she didn't slow her pace. Fame was fleeting, what mattered was the seed planted in people's minds. Respect, dignity, humanity. As she reached her gate, a young woman in a flight attendant's uniform approached shyly. Madam Grace, she said, her voice trembling, I just wanted to thank you. I saw the video. My grandmother went through something similar her whole life, but no one ever believed her stories. When I saw you, it felt like she was finally vindicated. Evelyn placed a gentle hand on the woman's shoulder. Then honor her by carrying yourself with the strength she gave you. And never forget, you deserve to be here. The young woman's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, whispering, yes, ma'am, before stepping aside. Moments later, Evelyn boarded her plane. As the engines roared to life, she gazed out the window at the tarmac below. A thought struck her, not of the humiliation she had endured, but of the trembling that followed. People trembled not because she was wealthy, but because they had seen truth unmasked. The world had been forced to confront its bias, and for once, it had listened. Marcus sat across from her, his ever-watchful eyes softer now. You've changed the conversation, he said quietly. Evelyn smiled faintly. No, Marcus. We changed it. Every person who shared that video, every voice that said enough is enough. I was just the spark. They are the fire. As the jet lifted into the clouds, Evelyn leaned back and closed her eyes. She thought of her parents, of the long road from obscurity to empire, of every door slammed in her face and every wall she had broken down. And she thought of the words she had carried her whole life: respect should never be conditional. When the plane broke through the clouds and the sky opened wide in endless blue, Evelyn Grace felt a peace she hadn't known in years. The world would go on doubting, mocking, underestimating, but now, it would also remember. Remember the elderly black CEO who walked into an airport in disguise, was blocked from her own plane, and revealed a truth so undeniable that everyone trembled. Her legacy would not be measured in dollars, but in dignity. And that, she knew, was the greatest wealth of all.